Okay, so you had mentioned that you know, obviously some things that they perceive that they're maybe anxious about, that we could work on different strategies. Now the question is, what is something you feel really good about, in the sense that you know you're doing well, that they've clearly told you're doing well, so obviously you continue on doing that.
Okay, so a lot of good things I did notice, the things they like. Many students mentioned that they like how I frequently change up the activity, so that even if they don't like a certain one, they know that they're going to get to do something that they like in my class, even if it's just like play a game or do the ball toss speaking practice. A lot of them mentioned they like the ball toss speaking practice. Even though they all hate speaking, they like it when they get to throw the ball with it. So that's one I'll be hanging on to and probably using more frequently. And then the other thing was, I was surprised at the amount of students that really do enjoy worksheets and independent work. And so I don't give too many worksheets, but at least I always feel guilty when I give them worksheets. But now I feel like for many students, I don't have to feel so bad about giving them a worksheet because they specifically wrote. I like the worksheets because it's a place for me to get everything down, and you give good feedback on them, and I let them keep them, and then I record that they did them with like a check plus system, because I don't like it when they turn things in, because then they don't get them for reference. And so I was happy to see that more kids liked worksheets than I anticipated.
Well, do you think that, so it sounds like to me it's more like the structure and then also the specific feedback from you that they appreciate.
Yeah.
And you also, I know that a lot of these activities that you had mentioned, a lot of your notes here as well from your pre-observation, that you had intentionally planned multimodal activities. So you had some tactile, some visuals, you had a lot of variety to it. Does that play part of it too as well? Or?
That plays a huge part, especially in teaching a language, because there's reading, which is visual. You have to do listening, which is for my kids that like to hear things, or music can be involved a lot with Spanish music. And so it kind of just goes with the content area. There's input, which is listening and reading, and then output is writing and speaking. And I have a lot of kids that excel in one, if not 2 to 3 of those areas. And as language teachers, we try to get to as many of those kinds of activities as we can in one day to help them process language learning. And so also just games. Nobody likes to memorize a list of vocabulary words. I probably have at least 10 different vocabulary games that we play for just straight up 2 weeks. Each day we play a different vocabulary game. And once they're really comfortable with the vocabulary, it becomes easier to apply it to the grammar. So games for vocabulary.
That's good. I feel that too. That's great.
And then another good thing was that I got typically high marks on everything, like 4s and 5. And then kids that would score me lower on like one category would either straight up explain why, because they wanted to be open about it, which I encouraged them. And then if not, I kind of just took it as a means, or like a time to self-reflect on why might that particular student have given me a 2 on explain things for me when I don't understand the first time or something. I don't know. But I got typically high scores.
That's good.
Which makes me happy.
It looks like you interpreted it to obviously mean some things that you're doing well to reinforce that.
Yeah.
And some things to continue to be pondering about and thinking different strategies to implement it. So now the $1 million question is, we talked about data. You know, you had the idea that your target was the vocab and grammar, which we talked about, and then speaking and writing about the educational career, with the context of the educational career. So another question is the next time we followed up, you followed up with an admin ticket the next time, which were some questions that specifically linked back to that learning target to determine how effective we were with that.
Yeah.
What did the data say about that? How did you interpret it?
So the vocabulary is centered around education and careers, but the grammar piece is speaking in the future, because I want to get them to talk about what their educational and career goals and plans are in Spanish. And so I guess if the vehicle to do that is this little grammar piece called ir plus a plus verb, which tells you how to say you're going to do something. And so when I went back through the data, I had them do 2 things for me. I had them match up the correct conjugations, like to say I'm going to, you're going to, he is going to, etc. And then I had them try to apply it by making it into a whole sentence using some of the new words that they learned for this unit. And so the data that I totaled up from all my classes surveys the particular block that you observed, 75% of my students could match the conjugation. They know how to say I'm going, or they at least know how to recognize or write back, I'm going to, he's going to, which made me happy because that's definitely more than the majority, but it was only the second week of the unit. And so it was not even midway through the unit. Most of my kids were getting the grammar piece. And then the second part where they had to take it and write it, actually do some writing for me and then put some of the new vocabulary words in, 55% could take the top part in, I wouldn't say it's level 3, but they could apply it in a way to take it a step further. And so... And that was a more, excuse me. That was a more difficult task down here, obviously. So how do you interpret that then? I mean, what does that tell you that in the weeks to come, obviously your second week into it, in the weeks to come, for this particular class? In the weeks to come, it tells me that students that can already write an entire sentence using the grammar and new vocabulary pieces, even if it was just something really short like this, it tells me that they're going to be successful like, there's 6 CFAs for the unit. It tells me that they're going to be successful on at least the writing one for sure, and then if not, the speaking one as well, which the writing and the speaking are always the learning goal for the unit.
So to increase that,
it tells me that they can just write out in one complete thought something about their future, whether it be education or careers, using correct grammar and recalling the vocabulary that we spent all those games on. So. Okay,
that's good. So some things are working well. How do you increase that from 55 on up? Just keep practicing? Keep practicing.
Usually in Spanish. At Spanish 2 at the beginning of the half of the year is still pretty, I don't want to say like basic, but in terms of how they're learning it, stays pretty foundational, and it just takes practice until it starts to really click, like, oh, and then you can take it further.
That's good.
Just practicing, which is why variety of activities was like the very first thing on the surveys, because if you're teaching them the same thing the whole day, every day, in terms of grammar and vocab, you have to put it in different vehicles for them. You know, you have to deliver it a certain way every activity, even if it's just we're still doing education and careers vocab and we're still speaking in the future. This time it's going to be a game, or this time it's going to be a ball toss and I'm going to put the questions on the board and we're going to talk about it. Or this time it's going to be you know, a mix and match writing activity where you're writing back and forth a letter to your partner or something. No matter what it is, it's got to have the vocab and the grammar. And
well, and they're communicating to you how things that they like, how they like to be taught.
Yes.
And then they're also communicating to you through this data. We're finding out things that they need to work on or things they're doing really well at. What do the rest of the classes say? How do we do there?
They aligned up pretty well. My blocks 7 and 8 also both in the 70s. 79% and 76% got the level 2 learning target for that day. And then applying it further went 62.5 and 62%. So they're pretty lined up. My block 1 is a really go-getter group. 95% of them have the level 2 learning target, and 75% of them were able to apply it one step further with vocabulary. So block 1 has been my go-getters. They're always on top of it.
Well, I think too, I love that. Again, we're growing here, and this might be a place as we're zeroing in the weeks to come. You know, is that something that, you know, we going back to the idea that they think about the writing part, and so maybe, you know, could we center some of those strategies that we implement, or try to explore different ways in the context of that speaking? Maybe that would increase. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it could, or at least something to think about. For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So in the future, anything that stands out to you as far as changing your instruction, what things will you do differently?
If I'm going to take on a big endeavor like the retaking to see it, like deciding I need to use class time
I think it's great
to take it to the tier 2 level, like if I need to use class time for tier 2, I did a lot of front loading for it, but just even more in my approach of how I'm communicating that to students should happen. So that's probably something I would change. And then also just not giving up or just keeping at the kids that don't want to put their head up, just do it anyway, I guess, or figure it out a different way to talk to him. Because now that I know what he has on his survey, now I might be able to say something to him about it, or be like, can we talk about this? Or like, I know I put him in my seminar and he sits with this girlfriend who I didn't know that she was a student in my other class. So they sit together and she's a hard worker and works. So he cares when in seminar he tries to do everything. And he's nice to me in seminar. And I was like, it's funny that you all of a sudden decide that you want to be an active student when your girlfriend is sitting next to you, but when I'm teaching, you can't do that. So at least I have some sort of doorway to talking about something with him. I don't know what I'll go on, but I'll find something to say to him about it now, and I won't, I guess I'm just too nosy to let it go. When kids give me a bad score on something, I have to figure it out.
Well, persistent. That sounds good.
So I think it'll just be keep trying to figure out those students who give me a difficult time during instruction, and then also when I take on big projects, like really communicate it a little bit more clear.
Well, I think that's a big thing too, is if we maintain curiosity, if we're always kind of wondering why, or why is that score like this, and how can I get it to this next spot, that's what really drives our ability to reach out, to find other strategies and that kind of stuff. If we're certain about something, we just lose all curiosity and we're content. And that's what I appreciate about you as a teacher, is that you're curious, you're asking questions, you're trying to find out, you're trying to improve, and you're being reflective. And that speaks. Yeah, thank you. So.
Cool. Or like when I had one student give me a 1 on that can explain things for me when I don't understand the first time, and I didn't think that student had many like issues in my class, but then I started paying attention. I was like, he doesn't have as greatest scores as I thought he did, but now that I have this on paper, I know that that's how he feels. And then I go back and I look at what he's turned in, and I go through his CFAs folder, and I'm like, not everything is adding up for this kid. So then I get him into my seminar, and he was in my seminar this week, and I really got after him about retakes, and he was really responsive to it. And I was like, it does, sometimes you need a kid to tell that you think is doing fine in your class to tell you, hey, I'm not doing fine because I feel like you can't ever explain it to me after the second time even.
Well, that's so important. I mean, that's the best part about taking advantage of data, because we do make assumptions. We feel a certain way, and the reality might be much different if we ask specific questions and go for certain data points.
But then, long story short, then I got that kid in my seminar this week, and he ended up retaking 2 pieces of the CFA and understood it just fine, because I spent a lot more time as like, he didn't put his name on it, but I recognized his handwriting. But so that immediately I zoomed in, and I was like, I gotta help him a lot, because he thinks I don't help him a lot, and now I have to, I gotta do this for him. Otherwise, he's gonna lose all faith in me if I pulled him in a seminar and then didn't give him the help he was asking me for on the survey. So, but I love that kid. I was like, why did he put that? He does fine in my class, you know. And then I was like, oh, I better.
You're keeping at it. That's great. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Simons. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
You are welcome. Thanks for coming to observe me.